Rain whispered against the glass as Victoria Cole swirled the last of her wine. The storm outside hadn't been in the forecast, but she liked it that way. Storms washed everything clean: the lies, the blood, the past. On the mahogany desk before her lay a neat stack of papers: life insurance documents, bank statements, property deeds. Nearly $3 million in neat little numbers. All of it hers now. Her husband, David Cole, was dead. At least, that's what everyone believed. She leaned back in his chair, her chair now, and smiled, a slow, satisfied smile that never reached her eyes. The police had called it an accident. The neighbors had brought flowers. Even his precious daughter, Emma, had cried herself to sleep, clutching that ridiculous stuffed rabbit. It was perfect. Perfect. Except for the feeling that someone was watching. Victoria glanced toward the ceiling. The smoke detector blinked once, a tiny red light in the dark. She didn't notice the faint lens hidden behind it, or the soft hum of a signal being transmitted miles away, straight into the hands of Detective Ethan Collins. And as Victoria raised her glass in a silent toast to her victory, Collins whispered to his team, "She's taken the bait. Let's finish this." Rain whispered against the wide glass windows of the Cole residence, tracing slow silver lines down the panes. Victoria Cole stood by the window with a half-empty glass of Merlot, watching lightning flicker across the sky. The house was quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that followed funerals. For most people, that silence carried sorrow. For her, it carried peace. She turned from the window and crossed the room. The study smelled faintly of cedar and old books. David had loved that smell, had said it made him feel grounded. She'd pretended to like it too once, when pretending was still necessary. Now, the scent only reminded her that the man who'd cared about such things was gone, buried in the ground, and every inch of this place belonged to her. His chair creaked softly as she sat down. Her chair now, she reminded herself, and spread a neat stack of folders across the desk. Bank statements, investment portfolios, insurance documents. All of it organized, categorized, waiting for her signature. $3 million in total. 2 from the life insurance, nearly another $1 million in savings, stocks, and the house. Not bad for a few months of patient work and well-timed affection. She took a slow sip of wine and smiled. David had been almost too easy. Lonely, grieving, grateful that someone like her would look at him twice. A kind man, decent, predictable, the kind that women like her had been manipulating since the beginning of time. He'd believed every word, every tear, every carefully rehearsed confession about finally finding love again. Pathetic. Victoria leaned back and stared at the ceiling fan turning lazily above her. It had taken just one dinner, one strategically placed touch of the hand. One sympathetic story about loss to make him fall. She'd known he would. Men like David always did. And when he'd finally proposed, fumbling with the ring, his eyes wet, she'd almost laughed out loud. Instead, she'd kissed him and whispered that she loved him. Then, after he'd gone to bed that night, she'd called Ryan. The memory of that call made her grin. Ryan Delaney. Her partner, her lover, the only person who truly understood her. They had planned everything down to the smallest detail. The timing of the brake line, the way the car would veer off the cliff, the insurance claim filed just 2 weeks earlier. Every piece had fallen into place, almost. Her smile faded slightly as she thought of Emma, David's 9-year-old daughter. The girl had been trouble from the start. Quiet, watchful, too observant for her age. Those big brown eyes had followed her everywhere, studying her as if trying to decode a secret. Victoria had tried to win her over at first, gifts, kindness, patience, but Emma never warmed to her. There was something unsettling about that child, something that made lying harder. But it didn't matter now. Soon, Emma would be on a plane to Switzerland, tucked away in some expensive boarding school where Victoria would never have to see her again. She turned back to the desk, flipping open a folder. There was still paperwork to sign, documents to file. The faster everything transferred into her name, the faster she and Ryan could disappear. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 10, echoing through the house. Victoria closed the folder, poured another glass of wine, and walked upstairs. Her heels clicked softly against the polished wood floor. As she passed Emma's bedroom, she paused. From inside came the faint sound of crying, small, muffled sobs. Victoria listened for a moment, her face expressionless. "Good," she muttered under her breath. "Cry yourself to sleep." She started to turn away, but something made her glance up. The smoke detector blinked once, a tiny red light. She ignored it and went into her own room, never realizing that the light wasn't a smoke detector at all. It was a camera, and it was recording everything. Miles away, in a dimly lit office, Detective Ethan Collins leaned forward in his chair, watching the live feed on a monitor. The image of Victoria standing outside Emma's door flickered on the screen, her cold eyes, the satisfied tilt of her mouth. Collins exchanged a look with his partner. "She's got no idea," he said quietly. "None," his partner replied. "Kid's doing great, too. Brave little thing." Collins nodded, his gaze still on the monitor. "Tomorrow, we close the trap." Back in the house, Emma lay awake in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her pillow was damp from tears. She'd heard Victoria's footsteps stop outside the door, felt the air go still, waiting for the handle to turn. When the footsteps finally moved away, she let out the breath she'd been holding. Her hands trembled as she reached under her pillow and pulled out the small burner phone Detective Collins had given her. A new message glowed on the screen. "Everything is in place. Tomorrow at noon we make our move. You need to be at school in the morning like normal. We'll come get you before anything happens. Your father is proud of you. Stay strong." Emma read the message 3 times before deleting it, just like Collins had taught her. Then she hugged the rabbit tight and whispered, "Mama, if you're listening, please help us tomorrow. Please keep Daddy safe." Outside, the storm deepened. Rain drummed against the window. Somewhere in the distance, an owl cried out, a lonely sound that made her feel less alone. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under, and she drifted into uneasy sleep filled with dreams of her mother's face and her father's voice calling her name. Morning came gray and wet. Victoria woke early, her mind already spinning through the day's tasks. She needed to call the insurance agent, confirm the transfer. She needed to meet with the realtor, start listing the house. She needed to begin the application for Emma's boarding school. But first, she needed the girl out of the way. She stood outside Emma's door and knocked sharply. "Get up," she called. "You're going to Aunt Sarah's for the day." The door opened a crack. Emma blinked sleepily, hair tangled, eyes swollen from crying. "I thought you said I couldn't go to Aunt Sarah's anymore." "I have meetings today," Victoria said curtly. "Adult things. Sarah will pick you up in an hour. Be ready." Emma nodded, trying to hide the relief in her chest. If she was at Aunt Sarah's, she'd be safe when the police made their move. She turned to pack her bag, but before she could, Victoria's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Hello?" she said, frowning. "Mrs. Cole, this is Detective Ethan Collins with the Riverside Police Department. came the calm voice on the other end. "I need you to come down to the station this morning. There are some questions regarding your husband's death that require your immediate attention." Her hand tightened around the phone. "Questions? What kind of questions?" "It's better if we discuss this in person. Can you be here by 10 a.m.? I suppose so, but I don't understand." "10 a.m., Mrs. Cole. Please come alone. This is a sensitive matter." The line went dead. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed Ryan. "They want me to come to the police station," she hissed when he answered. "They have questions about David's death." "What kind of questions?" "I don't know. They wouldn't say. What if they know, Ryan? What if someone saw something?" "Calm down," Ryan said, but there was tension in his voice. "You can't panic. If you panic, you'll look guilty. Just go in, answer their questions, stick to the story. You know nothing about any mechanical issues, you're just a grieving widow." "What if they arrest me?" "They can't arrest you without evidence, and there is no evidence. We made sure of that." But his voice didn't sound as sure as before. Victoria ended the call and turned sharply. Emma was standing in the hallway, watching her. The girl's face was pale, expression unreadable. "Change of plans," Victoria said briskly. "You're coming with me." Emma's heart skipped. "Where?" "The police station. They want to ask some questions. Get dressed." 15 minutes later, they were in the car. Rain streaked across the windshield, the wipers moving back and forth like a metronome counting down. Victoria's grip on the wheel was tight, her knuckles white. "If they ask you questions," she said suddenly, not looking at the mirror, "you tell them how much your father and I loved each other. You tell them we were happy, there was nothing wrong, understand?" Emma nodded mutely. "I mean it, Emma. If you say anything to make them suspicious—" Her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as a blade. "You'll regret it." Emma stared out the window, her stomach twisting. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell Collins right now. But she stayed still, silent, gripping her rabbit in her lap. They pulled into the police station at exactly 10. The building loomed ahead, old brick streaked with rain. Inside, officers moved briskly through the lobby. Phones rang. The air smelled of coffee and wet coats. Victoria straightened her blouse, smoothed her hair, and approached the front desk. "I'm Victoria Cole," she said, her voice steady. "Detective Collins asked me to come in." The receptionist nodded and made a quick call. Moments later, Detective Ethan Collins appeared. Tall, calm, composed, dressed in a dark suit. His eyes flicked briefly to Emma, then back to Victoria. "Mrs. Cole," he said, "thank you for coming. I wasn't expecting you to bring your stepdaughter." "I didn't have anyone to watch her," Victoria said coolly. "She can wait while we talk." "Actually," Collins said, his tone even, "I think it's better if she waits in our family room. Officer Bennett?" A female officer appeared. Friendly smile, kind eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she said to Emma. "Why don't you come with me? We've got books, games, snacks. You can wait there while Detective Collins talks to your mom." "Stepmother," Victoria corrected sharply. Emma looked at Collins. He gave her the smallest nod, so subtle Victoria didn't notice. "Okay," Emma said softly, and followed Officer Bennett down the hall. Collins gestured toward another door. "This way, please." They walked through narrow corridors until they reached a room marked Conference Room B. Inside, the walls were plain, the air cold. A metal table sat in the center, 2 chairs and a mirror that was clearly two-way glass. Victoria's pulse began to quicken. "Please have a seat," Collins said. She sat, folded her hands, forced her voice to stay calm. "Detective, I really don't understand what this is about." Collins opened a laptop on the table. "I'm going to show you something. I'd like you to watch carefully." He pressed play. The screen lit up with footage from inside her house. Victoria frowned, then froze. There she was, standing in the study, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. Her own voice filled the room. $2 million from the insurance, $500,000 for the house. We'll be set for life, Ryan. Then another clip. Her outside Emma's bedroom door, her face hard and cold. This footage, Collins said quietly, was obtained legally under a warrant. We have hours of it. You discussing your husband's murder, the insurance payout, and your relationship with Ryan Delaney. Her mouth went dry. I don't... He pressed play again. This time it was audio. Her call with Ryan that very morning. They can't arrest you without evidence, Ryan's voice said. We made sure of that. Collins looked at her. That's conspiracy, Mrs. Cole. Conspiracy and attempted murder. Victoria stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Collins said calmly. But before you go, there's someone who wants to see you. What? Who? Collins walked to the door and opened it. A man stepped inside. For a moment, Victoria forgot to breathe. Her legs gave way and she gripped the table to keep from falling. Hello, Victoria, said David Cole, alive, standing right in front of her. Her wine-red nails dug into the metal table. You're dead. The casket was empty, David said softly. You of all people should know that. She stared at him, face pale, disbelief giving way to fury. You faked your death? That's illegal. You can't. Actually, he interrupted, I can. The law allows cooperation in homicide investigations. You tried to kill me, Victoria, and now we have proof. Collins stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. Victoria Cole, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. No, she shouted. You can't prove anything. This is a setup. We can prove everything, Collins said. And Ryan Delaney has already confessed. He says it was your idea. Victoria's face twisted with rage and betrayal. That coward, that pathetic coward. Take her to booking, Collins said to the officers waiting outside. As they led her away, Victoria turned one last time, her eyes locking on David. You bastard. You used your own daughter as bait. What kind of father does that? David's jaw clenched. A father who protects his child from monsters like you. Her lips curled. That little brat, always watching, always judging. I should have gotten rid of her, too. Collins' voice cut through the air. Threatening a child? We'll add that to your charges, Victoria screamed as they dragged her out. Her voice echoed down the hallway until it faded completely. In the silence that followed, David's knees buckled. Collins caught him before he hit the ground. Easy, Collins said quietly. It's over. It's done. David buried his face in his hands. Where's Emma? I need to see her. She's safe, Collins said gently. Officer Bennett has her in the family room. She doesn't know you're here yet. David took a shaky breath and nodded. Then let's not make her wait any longer. Collins opened the door, motioning for him to follow. The hallway outside smelled faintly of rain and disinfectant, and somewhere in the distance, a little girl's laugh echoed faintly, the first sound of hope after a storm. The rain hadn't stopped since morning. It blurred the streets of Riverside into a watercolor of grays and silvers, washing away footprints and guilt alike. Inside the police station, Detective Ethan Collins stood by a window, coffee cooling in his hand, watching the drizzle stream down the glass. He could still hear Victoria Cole's screams echoing faintly from the Holden cells. Every word she'd hurled at David still hung in the air like smoke. He'd seen hundreds of suspects break down before, but this one had been different. There had been something feral in her, something that looked human only on the surface. Collins had learned long ago that evil didn't always snarl. Sometimes it smiled, poured you wine, and told you everything was fine. He turned as the door opened behind him. Officer Lauren Bennett stepped in, damp from the rain, her blonde hair pulled into a bun. "Emma's asking for her father," she said softly. "She's nervous, doesn't quite understand what's happening." Collins nodded. "She will soon." They walked together down the hall to the family room, a small space meant to look comforting, painted in warm colors, shelves of children's books along one wall. Emma sat on a couch, legs tucked under her, clutching the same stuffed rabbit she'd had in every piece of surveillance footage. Her eyes darted to the door when Collins entered. "Detective Collins?" she asked in a small voice. "That's right," he said gently, sitting across from her. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" She shrugged, staring at her shoes. "Is she gone?" "She's being processed right now," Collins said. "She won't hurt anyone ever again." Emma looked up, searching his face as if to make sure he meant it. "Can I see my dad?" Collins smiled. "He's waiting for you." Her breath caught, tears flooding her eyes before she could stop them. She rose from the couch, rabbit clutched tight, and followed him down the hallway. The sound of her small sneakers squeaking against the linoleum echoed faintly between them. When they reached the door, Collins opened it slowly. David Cole stood inside, his shoulders slumped, eyes tired but shining with emotion. For a moment, neither father nor daughter moved. Then Emma whispered, "Daddy." That was all it took. David crossed the room in 2 steps, and Emma ran straight into his arms. He lifted her up, holding her as if afraid she might disappear again. Tears streamed down both their faces. "You're okay," she sobbed into his neck. "You're really okay." "I'm here, Pumpkin," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for everything. You were so brave. You saved me." Collins quietly stepped back, letting them have their moment. Even after years in homicide, he still felt his throat tighten at scenes like this, the raw, unfiltered truth of love surviving what evil tried to destroy. When David finally sat Emma down, she didn't let go of his hand. "Is she really going to jail?" "She is," David said, "and she's never coming near us again." Collins added, "Ryan Delaney, too. He confessed this morning. He's already talking to the district attorney." Emma's brow furrowed. "He's scared of her," she said softly. "I could tell. He was always looking at her like he wanted to please her but didn't like her." David looked at her in amazement. "You notice that?" "I notice everything," she said simply. Collins exchanged a quick glance with Bennett. The kid wasn't exaggerating. She had been the sharpest witness they'd ever worked with. Without her courage, there would have been no case, no justice, no second chance for David Cole. An hour later, after the formal statements were taken and the chaos of arrest reports began to calm, Collins found David sitting alone in an interview room, staring at his hands. The adrenaline had worn off. What remained was exhaustion and disbelief. "You all right?" Collins asked, pulling up a chair. David looked up, his expression dazed. "I don't even know what all right means anymore." "That's fair," Collins said quietly. "You pulled off something most people couldn't even imagine. Faking your own death isn't exactly part of the normal grieving process." David let out a shaky laugh. "It felt wrong every second. Leaving my daughter, letting my sister mourn me. I kept wondering if I'd lost my mind." "You did it to protect Emma," Collins reminded him. "And you caught a killer. Don't forget that." David rubbed his eyes. "She said horrible things today. About Emma. About me. I knew she was cruel, but hearing her say she'd get rid of her too. I'll never forget that." Collins leaned back. "She lost control the moment she realized she couldn't win. That's how people like her work. When the mask cracks, everything underneath is ugly. David nodded, swallowing hard. Where's Emma now? Officer Bennett took her to get something to eat. She's in good hands. She wants to see her Aunt Sarah next. David smiled faintly. Sarah's going to kill me before hugging me. Collins chuckled. I've seen your file. You're her little brother, right? She'll forgive you. David stared at the table. I hope so. I can't believe she had to bury an empty coffin. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Collins stood, glancing toward the hallway. Come on, let's get you home. To the right kind of home this time. A short drive later, they pulled up in front of Sarah's townhouse. The rain had thinned to mist, wrapping the street in a gray veil. Inside the car, Emma fidgeted in the back seat, peeking over the front to watch the familiar windows glow with warm yellow light. She's going to faint, Emma whispered. Probably, David admitted, but she'll be okay. You need backup, Emma said solemnly. He smiled. Guess that's why you're here. Collins parked at the curb. I'll wait out here, he said. This is a family moment. Father and daughter walked up the short path to the door. David hesitated before knocking. His heart thudded like a drum. He rang the bell. Inside, footsteps approached. The door opened. Sarah stood there in jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair tied messily on top of her head. Her eyes went from Emma to David and froze. The world seemed to tilt. Hi, Rosie, David said softly, using the nickname from childhood. Sarah made a strangled sound and went pale. For a second, she swayed. David lunged forward just as her knees buckled, catching her before she hit the floor. Aunt Sarah, Emma cried, dropping beside them. She's fine, David assured her, patting Sarah's cheek. Sarah, hey, it's me. Wake up. Her eyelids fluttered. She blinked up at him, confused. Then her expression changed to shock, to disbelief, and finally to something halfway between joy and fury. You're dead, she whispered. I buried you. I know, David said, voice rough. I'm sorry. You faked your death? Her voice rose. You faked your death? He helped her sit up, guilt all over his face. I had to. It was the only way to prove what she did. Victoria tried to kill me, Sarah. She cut the brake line on my car. Emma overheard her. Sarah stared at Emma, stunned. You knew? Emma nodded, tears welling again. I told Daddy. We had to pretend. Sarah pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. Then she grabbed them both, pulling them into a fierce hug. You absolute idiots, she sobbed. I should strangle you both, but I'm so damn glad you're alive. David laughed through his tears. I deserved that. You deserve worse, she said, pulling back and smacking his shoulder lightly. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I spoke at your funeral. I know, he said softly. I'm so sorry, but it worked. She's under arrest. Sarah exhaled, trembling. That woman. I always felt something off about her. The way she'd smile too wide, talk too sweet. I should have trusted my gut. You weren't wrong, David said. She fooled all of us, except Emma. Sarah turned to her niece. You brave, brilliant girl. You saved your father's life. Emma's eyes filled again. Mama told me to, she said. In a dream. She said I had to protect Daddy. Sarah froze for a heartbeat, then her voice softened. Then maybe your mama's still looking out for you. She stood wiping her eyes. Come inside, both of you. You look like ghosts. The townhouse smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Sarah put water on for tea while David and Emma sat on the couch. For the first time since everything began, the air felt safe. Start from the beginning, Sarah said, setting mugs on the table, and don't skip details. So David told her. He spoke of the argument with Victoria over money, The night Emma overheard her on the phone with Ryan, the mechanic who'd helped her cut the brakes. He described the panic, the disbelief, the moment Collins came into the picture. When Collins suggested faking the accident, I thought he was insane, David admitted. But he convinced me it was the only way to catch her. If she thought I was dead, she'd get careless. She'd go after the insurance money. Sarah shook her head. And she did. God, David, the whole town mourned you. People brought food, flowers, donations. They'll lose their minds when they find out. I'll have a lot of explaining to do, he said with a sigh. Emma had been quiet through most of the conversation, listening. Finally, she said, "It's strange. I kept thinking I'd wake up one day and it would all be a nightmare, but it wasn't. Every morning she was still there." Sarah reached over, touching her niece's hand. "You don't have to be brave anymore, sweetheart." Emma nodded, but her voice trembled. "I think I forgot how not to be." The words hit David hard. He looked at his daughter, at the tired wisdom in her eyes, and felt the weight of every decision he'd made. "We'll get through this," he promised, "together." The rest of the day passed in a blur of calls and visitors. News spread fast. Riverside was a small town, and "Dead Man Returns, Wife Arrested for Attempted Murder" was too juicy a headline to ignore. Reporters swarmed outside. The phone rang non-stop. Sarah turned off the television to stop hearing the coverage. By evening, Detective Collins called with an update. "Ryan Delaney's cooperating," he said over the speakerphone. "He's already confessed to everything, including tampering with the brakes. Says Victoria planned it all." "She was always the mastermind," David said. "Ryan was just a tool." "Still," Collins said, "he'll do time. 8 to 10 years, maybe more. The DA's going for full conspiracy charges. As for Victoria, she's not getting out anytime soon." "Good," Sarah said flatly. "She deserves every second." Collins's tone softened. "David, there's something else. Emma's testimony is going to be crucial when this goes to trial, but she's been through a lot. The department can arrange counseling if you'd like." "I'd appreciate that," David said quietly, glancing at his daughter curled up on the couch. "She's stronger than I'll ever be, but no child should carry this." "Agreed. Rest for now. The paperwork can wait. You both earned a break." When the call ended, the house fell into an exhausted silence. Sarah reheated pasta, and the three of them ate together, laughter mixing with tears. For the first time in weeks, Emma ate a full meal. After dinner, Sarah tucked her into the guest room. "You're safe now," she whispered, brushing hair from Emma's forehead. "No more pretending." Emma's eyes were already heavy. "Promise?" "Promise." She kissed her good night and turned off the light. In the living room, David sat staring at the rain still trickling down the windows. Sarah joined him with 2 mugs of tea. "You look haunted," she said. "I feel it," he admitted. "It's strange. She almost got away with it. If Emma hadn't overheard that call—" "She did," Sarah interrupted firmly. "That's what matters." David nodded. "She's the bravest person I know." "She gets that from her mother," Sarah said softly. "And maybe a little from you." They sat in silence, the storm easing at last. Somewhere upstairs, Emma stirred, murmuring in her sleep. Outside, the rain stopped completely. The world seemed to exhale. For the first time in months, David believed that tomorrow might come, without fear. Morning light crept over the quiet neighborhood like a secret. Riverside had begun to stir again, unaware that its most sensational story was still unfolding behind police tape and whispered phone calls. Detective Ethan Collins hadn't slept much. He rarely did after a major arrest. He was in his office at dawn, a steaming cup of black coffee beside a stack of files, watching the surveillance footage one more time. Victoria Cole's face filled the screen. Pale, composed, the practiced mask of a woman who believed she controlled the world. Her final words before being led away still echoed in his ears. "That little brat. I should have gotten rid of her, too." He paused the video. The frame froze on her eyes, cold, venomous, stripped of the charm that had fooled everyone around her. Collins had investigated murders for 15 years, but few had chilled him like this one. It wasn't the crime itself, it was the casualness. The way Victoria treated murder like an inconvenient paperwork delay. He took a deep breath and closed the laptop. Today would be long. The DA wanted preliminary statements and the press conference was scheduled for noon. He'd have to stand before cameras, balancing professionalism with restraint. The story was already viral. Wealthy widow arrested in husband's fake death. He rubbed his temples. Some part of him hated the circus that always followed justice. Behind every headline there was a child like Emma. Brave, frightened, forced to grow up too soon. Down the hall, David and Emma were meeting with a social worker. Collins decided to check in. When he entered the small consultation room, he found Emma sitting on a swivel chair, spinning slowly while a woman in a beige blazer typed notes. David sat across from her, watching with weary amusement. "Morning," Collins said. David smiled faintly. "Morning, Detective. Didn't expect to see you this early. I live here, apparently." Collins gestured to the coffee cup. "You two holding up?" "We're processing," David said. Emma didn't sleep much. She kept dreaming about the police station. Emma stopped spinning. "I dreamed she got out," she whispered. Collins crouched down so he was eye level with her. "That's not gonna happen. She's behind bars and she'll stay there. You're safe." "Promise?" "I promise," he said firmly. "She can't hurt you or your dad ever again." Emma studied him, then nodded slowly. "Okay." The social worker cleared her throat. "Mr. Cole, once we finalize the protective order, you'll both be under police supervision for the next 72 hours. Standard procedure until the arraignment." "Understood," David said. "We'll stay at my sister's house. It's secure." "Good choice," Collins added. "Aunt Sarah's been calling every hour, asking if you've eaten." David laughed softly. "That sounds like her." Collins's phone buzzed. He checked the screen. A message from forensics. Break line analysis complete. Meeting at 10. "Excuse me a sec," he said, stepping out. In the corridor, officers were already bustling, phones ringing, printers humming. Rain still streaked the windows, the gray light giving everything a cinematic melancholy. Collins met his partner halfway down the hall. "Results just came in," his partner said. "Brake line was cut clean through. Tool marks consistent with the wrench we found in Ryan Delaney's garage. That ties them both to the car." "Yep, and Ryan's already rolling over like a saint on Sunday, claims Victoria planned everything." "She did," Collins said. "He was just the hands. She was the mind." His partner sighed. "You think she'll take a plea?" "She's too arrogant," Collins replied. "She'll fight it. Narcissists always do." He pocketed the report and walked back toward the consultation room, but paused at the glass window. Inside, David had pulled Emma onto his lap, pointing at a police sketchbook she'd found. He was drawing something, a stick-figure family, crude but endearing. David labeled each figure. Dad, Emma, Mama. Collins watched them for a moment. It struck him that amidst the paperwork and evidence, the case was really about this. Two people clinging to each other after surviving something monstrous. By afternoon, the press conference was underway. Cameras flashed in the rain-slick courtyard outside the Riverside Police Department. Reporters shouted questions over one another. Collins stood at the podium with the police chief beside him, reading from a prepared statement. Yesterday morning, Victoria Cole and Ryan Delaney were arrested for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud in connection with the staged death of David Cole. Through the cooperation of law enforcement and Mr. Cole himself, we gathered substantial evidence proving intent and premeditation. Flashes of light stung his eyes. A reporter called out, "Detective, is it true the victim's 9-year-old daughter assisted in the investigation?" Collins hesitated. Emma Cole was instrumental in alerting authorities to suspicious behavior. She acted with exceptional bravery. Another voice, "Will there be charges against Mr. Cole for faking his death?" "No," Collins said firmly. "Mr. Cole acted under direct supervision of law enforcement as part of an authorized operation." The reporters erupted again, but he didn't stay to answer further. He hated feeding the frenzy. While the world gorged itself on scandal, the real healing had only just begun. Back at Sarah's townhouse, things were less composed. The front yard was dotted with news vans, cables snaking across the grass. Sarah had taped a handwritten sign to the gate. Private property. No press. Inside, she paced the living room like a caged lion. "They're camped outside like vultures," she muttered. "Can't even go get groceries." David sat at the kitchen table, phone buzzing constantly with messages. Condolences, curiosity, judgment. He ignored them all. "Let them talk," he said quietly. "They'll move on to the next scandal soon." "Easy for you to say," Sarah replied, pouring coffee with unnecessary force. "You're the ghost come back to life. I'm the sister who apparently helped fake it." Emma was curled up on the couch, watching cartoons with the sound low. The rabbit sat beside her, ears bent. Every now and then, she'd glance toward the window where cameras glinted through the curtains. "Are they going to keep filming us?" she asked softly. "Not forever," David said, coming to sit beside her. "They just want a story." "I don't like them." "Neither do I," he said. "But sometimes bad people get all the attention before the good ones do." Emma thought about that. "Like her?" David nodded. "Exactly like her." There was a knock on the door. 3 short taps. Sarah went rigid. "If that's another reporter, I swear—" "It's me," called Collins's familiar voice. She exhaled and opened the door. The detective stepped in, dripping from the rain, shaking off his coat. "Apologies for the circus outside. I tried to redirect them." Sarah waved him in. "You look as tired as the rest of us." "Occupational hazard." He smiled faintly, then turned to David and Emma. "How are we doing?" David shrugged. "Holding together. Barely." Collins sat, folding his hands. "There's some new information you should hear directly. Ryan Delaney has given a full statement. He claims Victoria convinced him you were emotionally abusive, that you controlled her finances, and she needed to escape. That's the story she told him to justify the plan." David's eyes hardened. "That's a lie." "I know," Collins said, "but she's going to use it in court. She'll claim she was desperate, manipulated by you. It's her best chance of avoiding a life sentence." Sarah scoffed. "She murdered a man who wasn't even dead. That's poetic justice if I've ever heard it." Collins allowed himself a grim smile. "Maybe so. Still, we need to prepare. Emma's testimony will be key." David's expression flickered. "She's only 9. She doesn't have to testify right away," Collins said. "But when the time comes, she'll tell the truth. That truth is stronger than any defense Victoria can invent." Emma had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "I can do it." Everyone turned to her. Her small voice was steady. "If she tells lies, I'll tell what really happened." David knelt beside her, pride and worry mingling in his eyes. "You're brave, sweetheart. But we'll make sure you're ready first." Emma nodded solemnly, hugging the rabbit tighter. "Mama said the truth always wins, even if it takes time." Sarah blinked back tears. She's got her mother's heart. That evening, the rain finally stopped. The neighborhood was drenched and still. Sarah cooked dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something warm and grounding. The scent filled the house. David helped set the table while Emma drew at the kitchen counter. "Feels almost normal," Sarah said, watching them. "That's the idea," David replied. "Normal's a luxury these days." When they sat down to eat, Emma asked between bites, "What happens to her now?" "Victoria?" David asked. Emma nodded. "She'll stay in jail until the trial. The police have all the proof they need." "Good," Emma said softly. "She doesn't deserve nice things." David looked at her carefully. "It's okay to be angry. Just don't let that anger stay forever. It changes you." "She changed us," Emma said. "All of us." He couldn't argue with that. After dinner, David stepped outside to get some air. The street smelled of wet asphalt and pine. He leaned against the railing, staring up at the cloudy sky. For months, he'd lived like a ghost, moving in shadows, pretending to be dead. Now he was alive again, but part of him still felt invisible. The door creaked behind him. Collins stepped onto the porch, hands in pockets. "Figured I'd check in before heading out," he said. "Can't stay away from paperwork?" David asked wryly. "Or from good coffee," Collins said. "Your sister's brewing could wake the dead." David chuckled, then grew serious. "Thank you for everything." Collins nodded. "You don't owe me thanks. You and your daughter did the hard part. You lived through it." David hesitated. "Do you ever stop thinking about the cases after they're over?" "No," Collins admitted. "You just learn to carry them differently." He paused, studying David's face. "You'll carry this too, but it won't always hurt." David looked toward the window where Emma was visible through the glass, coloring quietly at the table. "As long as she's okay, I can handle the rest." Collins followed his gaze. "She's more than okay. She's a hero. She's a child," David said softly, "and I want her to be one again." Collins nodded in understanding. "Then that's your next mission, Mr. Cole. Help her be a kid again." They shook hands before Collins headed down the steps toward his car. The detective glanced back once, watching the father silhouetted against the porch light, then drove off into the wet night. Later, when the house was quiet, David tucked Emma into bed. She was half asleep, her hair spread across the pillow. "Daddy?" she murmured. "Yes, Pumpkin. When I had to pretend you were gone, I talked to Mama every night. I told her I'd keep you safe." David felt a lump in his throat. "She'd be so proud of you." "Do you think she's proud of you too?" He smiled through tears. "I hope so." "Good," Emma whispered, and drifted into sleep. David sat beside her for a long time, listening to her breathing. The clock ticked softly. Somewhere outside, a distant siren wailed, a reminder that the world kept moving, that evil never really vanished, only changed its name. But inside that room, there was peace. He turned off the lamp and went to the living room where Sarah was dozing on the couch, the TV playing a muted news report. Yet sources confirm that Victoria Cole will face multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. David muted the sound completely. "Enough of that," he said, pulling a blanket over his sister. She stirred. "You okay?" "I think so," he said, "for the first time in a long while." "Good," she murmured, eyes closing again. "You deserve it." He stood there for a moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the house. The smell of dinner still lingered, warm and human. He thought of Collins's words. help her be a kid again. That would be his new purpose. No more pretending. No more fear. As he turned out the lights, dawn was already starting to gray the edges of the sky. For once, the new day didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to begin. The morning sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, flooding the small kitchen of Sarah's townhouse with soft golden light. The storm had passed, leaving puddles on the street and a thin mist clinging to the trees. Inside, the smell of brewed coffee and buttered toast filled the air. David Cole sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug, staring at the quiet miracle of normalcy. The world had tilted back into place, though crookedly. Across from him, Sarah hummed absently as she flipped pancakes, her hair tied up in a messy bun. Emma sat at the counter, drawing on a napkin with a pink marker, her stuffed rabbit balanced beside her plate. For a few minutes, everything was ordinary, or at least pretending to be. Sarah glanced over her shoulder. "You're staring at that coffee like it's a math problem." David smiled faintly. "Just trying to remember the last time life felt simple." "Before Victoria," she said without hesitation. He didn't argue. "Before everything." Emma looked up from her drawing. "Before Mama died?" The room went quiet. David's chest tightened. "Yeah," he said softly. "Before that." Sarah turned off the stove and joined them, placing the pancakes in the middle of the table. "We can't live before, David. Only after. And after's not so bad when you've still got family." He nodded slowly. "You sound like Mom." "She was usually right," Sarah said, with a small grin. Emma giggled. "Aunt Sarah, you sound like you should be on TV." "I'll take that as a compliment," Sarah said, passing her the syrup. "Eat, little one. Detectives don't live on air alone." They ate quietly for a while, listening to birds outside. It was the first time in months that Emma had eaten without glancing over her shoulder, without fear tightening her face. After breakfast, David stepped out onto the porch. The street was calm, except for the distant hum of reporters packing up their vans. The media storm was moving on, just as he'd predicted. People had gotten their headline, their scandal, and now they were chasing the next one. He took a deep breath of clean morning air. For once, the rain smelled like renewal. Inside, Emma and Sarah were clearing dishes. Emma dropped a fork, and the clatter made her jump. She froze for a moment, then laughed nervously. "I thought it was her." Sarah's face softened. "She can't come back, sweetheart." "I know," Emma said quickly. "It's just, I keep hearing her voice sometimes, when the house creaks or the wind blows." Sarah dried her hands and crouched beside her. "That's not strange. Fear doesn't vanish just because the danger's gone. It fades slower." "Does it fade for you, too?" Sarah hesitated. "It will, eventually." David re-entered, catching the tail end of their conversation. He leaned against the doorframe, watching his daughter's face. There was something new there now. Not just fear, but wisdom. Too much for a child her age. "Emma," he said gently, "want to take a walk later? Just you and me." Her eyes brightened. "Can we go to the park?" "Sure, maybe get ice cream after." Her smile was small but real. "Chocolate chip?" "Always." Sarah smiled, shaking her head. "You two go. I'll keep the house from being stormed by curious neighbors." "Deal," David said. The park sat at the edge of town, a wide stretch of green bordered by maple trees. The air smelled of damp earth and cut grass. David and Emma walked the path slowly, hands linked as if testing the world again. Children played on the swings, their laughter carrying through the air. For the first time in months, the sound didn't hurt. Emma stopped by the pond where ducks glided across the water. "They look free," she said. "They are," David answered. "They go wherever they want. I want that." she said quietly. To not feel scared all the time. He crouched beside her. You will. It takes time. You've been through things most adults couldn't handle. Sometimes I feel brave, she said, and sometimes I feel like I might break. He touched her cheek gently. You can be both. She looked at him. Did you feel scared when you pretended to die? He exhaled slowly. Every second. But I thought if I didn't do it, I'd lose you. So I had to choose between fear and losing you, and fear was easier. Emma looked down at the water. I missed you so much. I missed you too. They sat there a while, watching sunlight ripple over the pond. When Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, David felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't thought he'd feel again. After a while, he said, You know, Detective Collins asked if we'd start therapy. I think it could help, for both of us. Talking to a stranger? Emma wrinkled her nose. I don't know. She's not really a stranger, he said. Her name's Dr. Julia Harper. She helps kids who've been through hard things. You can talk or draw or just listen. No pressure. Emma thought about it, then nodded slowly. If you do it, too, I will, he promised. We'll both go. Dr. Julia Harper's office sat above a small bookstore downtown. The waiting room smelled like lavender and paper. Sunlight spilled through lace curtains onto shelves of children's books and art supplies. It didn't feel like a doctor's office. It felt safe. Emma sat cross-legged on a soft rug, coloring quietly while Dr. Harper spoke with David. The therapist was in her early 40s, calm but sharp-eyed. She's remarkably self-aware for her age, Dr. Harper said. That's a sign of both intelligence and trauma. Children who've had to read danger early become hyper-observant. It's how they survive. David nodded, fingers tracing the edge of his coffee cup. She's been brave through all of it, braver than me. Courage doesn't mean not being scared, Dr. Harper said. It means doing what's right even when you are. He smiled faintly. That sounds like something she'd say. Dr. Harper looked at him. You should know she'll need time. She may act fine on the outside but still carry guilt. Children often feel responsible for protecting their parents. You need to make sure she knows she doesn't have to anymore. David's throat tightened. I'll do whatever it takes. That's all she needs, the doctor said gently. When the session began, Emma sat across from Dr. Harper, holding her rabbit. Do you know why you're here? The therapist asked. Emma nodded. Because bad things happened, and sometimes bad things stay in your head. Dr. Harper smiled. That's a very good way to say it. What happens when the bad things stay? They make you scared even when you're safe. That's right. So we talk about them. Talking helps them shrink. Emma thought for a long moment. Then, I want to make them small enough to fit inside my rabbit. Dr. Harper chuckled softly. We can try that. At the end of the session, David waited by the door. Emma came out smiling shyly. She has good cookies, she said. That's how she gets people to talk, David said. Then it worked, Emma said, giggling. Weeks passed. The media storm finally died. Victoria's face disappeared from the headlines, replaced by new scandals. The Cole family began to rebuild quietly. David rented a small house in the countryside 30 miles from Riverside, a cozy 2-bedroom cottage with white shutters and a big oak tree in the yard. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. The day they moved in, Emma hung a wind chime on the porch. When the breeze passed through, it sang like laughter. This is home, David said, watching her spin in the grass. Home without ghosts, she replied. Sarah visited often, bringing groceries and stories. Each time she came, she'd find David fixing something. painting the porch, planting flowers, building a tire swing for Emma. It became a ritual of healing, one nail and one laugh at a time. But even as peace returned, the shadow of the trial loomed. The date had been set for spring. Collins visited occasionally to update them on the progress. "She's not taken a plea," the detective said one afternoon, sitting at their kitchen table. "Victoria wants her day in court." "Of course she does," David said bitterly. "She wants an audience." "She'll have one," Collins said, "but she won't like the ending." Emma listened from the doorway. "Will I have to go?" Collins met her gaze gently. "Yes, but not yet. You'll be ready, and we'll be with you." She nodded, trying to be brave, though her hands twisted in her lap. That night, David couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room with a cup of tea gone cold, listening to the wind. On the mantel, above the fireplace, stood a framed photograph. His late wife, smiling in sunlight, holding baby Emma in her arms. He reached up, tracing the glass with a trembling finger. "You'd know what to say," he murmured. "You always did." Behind him, a small voice said, "Talking to Mama?" He turned. Emma stood in the doorway, her hair tousled from sleep. She came over and climbed into his lap. "Do you miss her too?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "But she's here, in little ways. In you." Emma leaned her head against his chest. "Do you think she knows what happened?" "I think she does," he said. "And I think she's proud of you." They sat like that for a while, the fire crackling softly. The house no longer felt haunted, only full of memory, of love, of second chances. Months later, spring came early. The trees burst into blossom, and with them came the trial. Riverside buzzed again with curiosity. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, eager for another headline. David and Emma arrived hand in hand. She wore a pale blue dress, her hair braided neatly. Inside, the courtroom smelled faintly of varnish and tension. Victoria Cole sat at the defense table, her beauty diminished but her arrogance intact. When her eyes met David's across the room, her lips curved into a smirk. David's stomach turned, but he held Emma's hand tighter. Detective Collins took the stand first, presenting evidence. The recordings, the camera footage, the brake line tool. Each detail painted the picture of a woman who believed she could rewrite fate. Then came Emma's turn. When the bailiff called her name, the room fell silent. She walked to the witness stand, small and steady, her rabbit tucked in her lap. The judge smiled kindly. "You ready, young lady?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said. Her voice was clear as she described hearing Victoria's phone call that night, how she'd warned her father, how they'd worked with the police. She spoke of fear, of courage, of truth. By the time she finished, even the reporters looked moved. Victoria's lawyer tried to rattle her, suggesting she'd been coached, that she'd misunderstood. But Emma simply said, "I know what I heard, and I know what she did." There was no more to argue. When the verdict came days later, guilty on all counts, David closed his eyes and exhaled. Emma squeezed his hand. "She can't hurt anyone now," she whispered. "No," he said, "not ever again." Weeks after the trial, life began to bloom again. The cottage garden was full of color. The tire swing creaked in the wind. David and Emma visited the cemetery one afternoon, bringing lilies for the woman who had started it all. They stood before the grave in silence. The marble gleamed in sunlight. "Hi, Mama," Emma whispered. "We're okay now." David placed the flowers down. "We made it," he said softly, "thanks to her." He looked down at his daughter, smiling faintly. "You ready to go home?" She nodded. "Can we stop for ice cream?" He laughed. "Always." As they walked away, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees. The chime of distant bells echoed like a blessing. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, David stood on the porch watching the sunset fade into twilight. The world felt lighter somehow. He thought of everything they had survived. The lies, the fear, the darkness, and how, against all odds, the truth had brought them back. Sometimes he realized justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about reclaiming life. Inside the house, the wind chime sang softly, carrying the sound of peace through the quiet night. And for the first time since the storm began, David Cole believed, truly believed, that they were finally free. Spring in Riverside carried the scent of rain and renewal. The last traces of the trial had faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals and fresher tragedies. But for David Cole and his daughter Emma, the echoes still lingered in quiet corners of their lives. In the way neighbors looked at them a moment too long, in the occasional letter from journalists begging for interviews, in the nights when nightmares still returned uninvited. But, for the most part, peace had returned. Their little cottage in the countryside had become a sanctuary. Every morning, the sun rose through the kitchen window, turning the table gold. Birds nested in the oak tree, and the wind chime Emma had hung months ago played its soft song whenever the breeze passed through. David had built a small vegetable garden by the fence. Emma helped him plant tomatoes and marigolds, her hands deep in the earth, her laughter bright again. There was something healing about watching things grow, about seeing life return where once there had been only fear. One Saturday morning, as David knelt in the garden pulling weeds, he heard the screen door creak open behind him. Emma stepped out barefoot, wearing her favorite blue dress, her hair loose in the wind. "Daddy," she said, holding a folded letter. This came from Detective Collins. David wiped his hands on his jeans and took it. The handwriting was neat, precise. He opened the envelope and read aloud. "David and Emma, the DA's office wanted me to let you know that the sentencing hearing for Victoria Cole concluded yesterday. The court upheld the maximum penalty, 25 years without parole. Ryan Delaney received 8 years for conspiracy and has already been transferred to state prison. I wanted to tell you both personally, justice was served. You can finally breathe. Ethan Collins." David stared at the letter for a long time. 25 years, a lifetime and yet not enough. Emma watched him closely. "Is it over now?" He folded the paper carefully. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over." "Does that mean we can stop being scared?" He smiled faintly. "That's exactly what it means." Emma let out a small sigh, the kind children make when they've been carrying something too heavy for too long. "Good," she said softly. "I want to be normal again." "You are normal," David said. "You're just stronger than most people." That afternoon, they drove into town to meet Dr. Julia Harper for their regular therapy session. The little office above the bookstore had become a safe space for both of them, a place where silence didn't have to mean danger. Dr. Harper greeted them with her usual calm warmth. "You both look well," she said, pouring tea into mismatched cups. Emma grinned. "We brought tomatoes from our garden. Homegrown gifts are my favorite kind," Dr. Harper said. "Why don't you start, Emma? How have things been this week?" Emma sat cross-legged on the couch, twisting the corner of a cushion. "Good, mostly. I still dream about her sometimes. But now, when she shows up, she's behind glass, like in the courtroom. She can't reach me." Dr. Harper nodded. "That's your mind, showing you you're safe now. The fear is still there, but it's contained." Emma considered this. "So dreams are like practice for being brave?" "Exactly," Dr. Harper said. "You're retraining your heart to believe what your mind already knows, that the danger is gone." David listened quietly, pride and pain mixing in his chest. He hadn't realized how much Emma had grown, not just taller, but older inside. The experience had carved wisdom into her the way rivers carve valleys. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. Dr. Harper turned to him. "And how are you holding up, David?" He hesitated. "Better. Some nights are rough. I still see her sometimes. Victoria, not as she was at the end, but how she used to look, smiling, pretending to care. And then I wake up angry at myself for ever believing it." "That's not weakness," Dr. Harper said. "It's grief for what you thought was real. It's normal to mourn even the illusion of love." He nodded. "I just don't want Emma to inherit my mistakes." Emma leaned against him. "You didn't make mistakes, Daddy. You just trusted the wrong person. That's not your fault." Dr. Harper smiled gently. "She's right, you know." For the first time, David didn't argue. On the drive home, the sky turned lavender with dusk. The road curved through open fields, and for a while neither of them spoke. Then Emma said quietly, "Daddy, do you think she ever feels sorry for what she did?" David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "People like Victoria don't feel sorry the way we do. They regret getting caught, not what they did." Emma stared out the window. "Then she'll never change." "I don't think so," he said. "But we don't have to carry her anymore. That's what matters." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll stop carrying her." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's my girl." A week later, they visited Aunt Sarah for dinner. The townhouse smelled of rosemary and garlic. Sarah had insisted on cooking, declaring that the best cure for trauma was too much food. When David and Emma arrived, she hugged them both tightly. "My two favorite troublemakers," she said. "You look human again." David laughed. "That's progress." Over dinner, Sarah caught them up on gossip. Who in town had sold their house, who was secretly dating the mayor's son, who had tried to sell Victoria's story to a tabloid and been shut down by the police. Emma listened wide-eyed. "They wanted to make a movie about her?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Hollywood can't resist a villain with lipstick." David grimaced. "They'll sensationalize it, turn it into entertainment. Then make them tell the truth first," Sarah said. "If they're going to make a story, let it be one about courage, not cruelty." Emma's face lit up. "A story about a girl who helped her dad catch a bad person?" "Exactly," Sarah said. "And maybe the girl gets ice cream at the end." "Chocolate chip," Emma said instantly, and they all laughed. It was the kind of laughter that cleansed a house. Later, after dinner, Sarah pulled David aside. "You're doing good, you know. Better than you think." He smiled tiredly. "Some days I believe that." She studied him. "You ever think about what's next?" "I'm not sure. Maybe a fresh start somewhere else. Somewhere no one knows us as that family." "You don't have to run," Sarah said. "You can stay and build something new." He looked toward the living room where Emma was drawing on the carpet. "Maybe we already are." Time softened the edges of memory. Summer came. The garden flourished. The town forgot its scandal. One warm afternoon, David found himself in the kitchen with a box of old photographs. He spread them across the table. His wedding, Emma's first birthday, family picnics. He hesitated at one photo of Victoria smiling in sunlight, her hand on his shoulder. The smile that once looked like love now seemed hollow. He picked up the picture and slipped it into a drawer. Some memories didn't deserve to live on the wall. Emma came in, her hair tangled from playing outside. "What are you doing?" "Sorting old photos," he said. "Did you find any of Mama?" He nodded and showed her one. A young woman with bright eyes holding baby Emma at the beach. "She was beautiful," Emma whispered. "She was," he agreed. "You have her smile." "Then I'll keep smiling for both of us," she said softly. He pulled her into a hug, the photo pressed between them like a bridge across time. By autumn, the leaves had turned red and gold. Riverside moved on, as towns always do. But for the Coles, every small thing became a milestone. The first Halloween costume Emma picked without fear, the first time David slept through the night without waking from the sound of imagined footsteps, the first morning they both laughed without guilt. And then came the day they decided to visit the cemetery again. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue. Emma carried a small bouquet of wildflowers. David held a thermos of coffee, the way he always had on long drives. They stopped by the grave of Emma's mother. The headstone gleamed softly in the sun. "Hi, Mama," Emma said, kneeling down. "We came back to tell you everything's okay now. The bad lady's in prison, Daddy's safe, and I'm not scared anymore." David set the coffee beside the flowers. "She's right. We're safe. And we're learning to be happy again." Emma traced the carved name with her fingers. "Do you think she can hear us?" "I think she's been hearing us all along," David said. They stood in silence, the wind whispering through the trees. A sense of peace settled over them, not the fragile kind, but the kind that stays. When they turned to leave, Emma looked up at him. "Daddy, when people die, do they forgive?" He thought about it. "I think love forgives everything," he said. "Even the mistakes we can't take back." "Then Mama forgives you." David smiled, tears stinging his eyes. "I hope so, Pumpkin. I really hope so." Months later, Detective Collins visited the cottage one last time. He stood at the gate, watching Emma push herself on the tire swing while David trimmed the hedges. "Looks like paradise," Collins said. "Close enough," David replied. Collins handed him a sealed envelope. "This is from the DA's office. Official closure on the case. You're free to move, travel, whatever you want." David opened it briefly, scanning the words. Case closed. 2 words that felt heavier than any others. "Thank you," he said quietly. Collins smiled. "You both earned your peace. Don't waste it." "I won't." Emma waved from the swing. "Detective Collins." He walked over. "Hey, kiddo. Guess what? I'm writing a story about us." "Are you?" he asked, amused. "Yeah, it's called The Girl Who Knew the Truth. Daddy says stories keep memories alive." Collins crouched beside her. "Then that's a story worth keeping." When he stood to leave, David walked him to his car. "You're always welcome here," David said. "I'll take you up on that, but next time no murders, okay?" David laughed. "Deal." Collins drove off, the dust rising behind his car. David watched until the sound faded, then turned toward the house. Emma was still swinging, her laughter floating through the air, bright and unburdened. For the first time, it sounded exactly like childhood should. That evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky burned orange and pink over the fields. Emma rested her head against his shoulder. "Daddy?" she murmured. "Yeah? Do you think Mama sees this?" He smiled. "I think she's the one painting the sky." They watched until the colors faded into night. Crickets sang. The wind chime whispered. David thought about everything that had brought them here. The deception, the fear, the courage of a little girl who refused to stay silent. And somewhere in that mix of memory and light, he understood that survival was its own kind of justice. He whispered, almost to himself, "We made it." Emma didn't answer. Already asleep against his side, her small hand resting on his arm. He carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and stood for a long moment watching her breathe. The room glowed softly from the nightlight, the shape of a moon and stars. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. The house creaked, familiar and alive. David turned off the light and whispered into the dark, "Thank you," though he wasn't sure to whom. To fate, to love, to the woman who had guided them even from beyond. In the quiet of that moment, the world finally felt still. Weeks later, the story of the Cole family resurfaced one last time, not as a scandal, but as a documentary about courage and resilience. The narrator's voice said what the headlines never had. Sometimes the smallest voice holds the greatest courage. Sometimes the truth survives not because it is loud, but because it refuses to die. And somewhere, in a little white cottage surrounded by marigolds and laughter, David and Emma Cole live those words every single day.